Coming off the war that was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, the U.S. found themselves in another world war just 20 years later. Thus, the results of World War I were still in effect. During World War II, the demand for labor surged, leading to the increased utilization of female workers in various industries traditionally dominated by men. As women entered roles previously deemed as men's work, they demonstrated their competence and capability, challenging societal norms. The fact that women were not only intrigued by the discussion of new jobs, but also many times quicker than their male counterparts gained national approval from different presidents during this time, spanning from Franklin D. Roosevelt to Dwight D. Eisenhower. Increased utilization of female workers in previously male-dominated fields during World War II catalyzed the breakdown of gender barriers, ultimately creating greater job opportunities, empowering women, and adding variety to the workforce. The war to end all wars was the name given to World War I, but 20 years later, the United States was on the brink of entering yet another war, and the requirements for women to fulfill male absence rose dramatically. Previously to World War I, the stereotype surrounding women was to care and feed the children, as well as please their husbands. However, during the Great Depression, women took the jobs left by men and were criticized for stepping beyond the societal boundaries. Thus, working near the war was unheard of. The acceptable job at the time for women was doing clerical work back home. Men were vital to the war, leading to women having to fill the voids back home, allowing more men to fight in combat rather than doing chores that society saw as women's duty. The war affected not only men, but everyone in the world, leading to an adequate number of women joining in the war efforts, ensuring that the U.S. would be the ones that would be triumphant. It was wonderful that women were filling the void left behind by men, but now it's time for them to jump into the war firsthand and become a major reason why the U.S. was victorious at the end. As the number of women enlisting in the war grew, so did their responsibilities. Women made up more than a quarter of the military, providing them with different tasks that ensured their safety, as well as that of the men fighting along them. Nursing has become one of the many calling cards for women. Nurses helped with any injuries to soldiers and military personnel. Women were more than nurses well. Arguably, their biggest contribution was in the defense industry. Although working in the front lines of the war was already an accomplishment in itself, in comparison to World War I, nearly everyone, both men and women, had to work to support either their home or war fronts. Without the efforts of women, manufacture rates would be much lower than the rates we saw during the war. Not only were women manufacturing ammunition, but they were learning to fly airplanes, which enabled war generals to have a variety of volunteers to risk their lives. Although women were in the war for the men's benefit, the two parties did not always see eye to eye, leading to confrontation based on a lack of communication and pre-existing stereotypes. Change is never easy. Given the assertion of women in facilities so closely tied to the male-dominated war, men were determined to rid the newfound threat of women in any way possible. Male opinion varied. Many were thrilled to see a new face in the war, however others feared that women would take their jobs. Fearing for their jobs, they tried anything to rid themselves of women, creating fake narratives that would hopefully reinforce the pre-existing boundaries and send the women back home, away from the war front, thus solidifying their roles away from combat. Although men were frustrated with a new workforce, it was necessary for the well-being of the country. Both President Franklin D. Roosevelt and Dwight D. Eisenhower's expression of appreciation for women caused a widespread ripple effect on the public sentiment. The military needed to fill this position in any way possible, even if that meant steering away from the public stereotype and recruiting women. As men ran low, women were called to fill the void. Presidential remarks paved the way for breaking the gender barrier and helping the U.S. win the war by any means necessary. In 1948, General Eisenhower created the WAC. Thus, the ability for women to contribute firsthand during World War II changed the workforce for not only women in the late 1950s, but in the years following. Women's contributions to the war were second to none. The ability for women to fill the positions left behind by men and contribute to the war front was a vital reason why the U.S. won World War II. Women are still inspired by the symbol of Rosie the Riveter, leading them to become major contributors to politics and social change. Even today, we see women breaking barriers such as Kamala Harris becoming the first vice president, which we would never seen without the women in World War II. Seeing women today do everything their male counterparts can do is what inspired me to do this project. Seeing my mom become a nurse would not have been available if not for the female nurses during World War II, paving the way. Without something as tragic as World War II, we would never have seen the full potential of women today.